All set.
We all set technologically?
We are. Roger, are you ready?
I was.
You don't have any video?
It's like the Gremlins
Oh,
change
yeah.
places.
Look at you.
Oh,
The
well,
video's turned off.
wow.
Although you're up here. I see you on there.
Well, why would? What do you want me to do? Because it says all I can do is stop video here. When I click on these buttons.
Okay.
Maybe start it again, give it a kick.
Well, I can leave, but I'm not because I'm not the host
Yeah, you
anymore.
want to leave and try to come back in?
I think Hunter's up 3-1 on Mousetrap, so.
Such a
Thank you,
No,
there's
since we
Burma.
start from room and ask again.
We had
And let you
Start
do
from room only.
heavy chemical stuff if you don't do it.
We had one last night. She's got like a certain, and I turned the light on and then she was walking up the stairs like, hey,
Yep.
like, open up the window, snack for somebody
I don't know.
else.
I'm not, this is different. Usually it just starts as soon as I say start.
Got
This
it,
is
like
what
Avengers.
the screen looks like. This-
You might have to.
Very
come
cool.
back and sign in.
I
I
have.
can go to do shots because
Well,
I'm not
Recording
really
in
right.
progress.
How many do you have?
6.
Okay,
Oh, no, you didn't have to. You're in there.
and one's rented, right?
People at home get to hear our conversation.
Yes, they do.
about greenhouses and
Greenhouses and the cats and the year without Santa Claus.
are we no longer echoing?
I think we're good.
geez, oh yeah, it's up there now.
Okay. So we're good? Yeah, it's only a couple minutes late.
No, it still says town. It still says that I'm not recording.
Do you want me to record? No, it says recording, D on mine.
Yeah.
All right.
Recording for
There's
Zoom
Rogers.
posterity. Yeah.
Roger's up there.
This went like smoothly for like weeks and
Yeah,
weeks and
and
weeks.
yeah.
And
I really dislike technology sometimes.
now it's just
Yep.
not.
Frustrating.
Thanks for.
Okay. We're gonna call this meeting to order. Hopefully people who are online and if there are issues somehow raise comments and we'll look into it here. This is a Berlin Select Board meeting for Thursday, November 13th. It's after 6:30. It is generally going to be an information session. People in the audience here, if you want to speak on something, we'll have to have you come forward so it can be on the microphone and be recorded. State your name and the street address, the street you're on. You don't have to give house numbers. And then online, if you raise your hand, we will look over hopefully often enough and recognize you to come forward. And then the formal announcement here that we get to welcome you and thank you for joining us today, whether in person or virtually. Be advised that this is an open session and the public meeting is being recorded. And as such, your voice and your image may be captured during the proceedings. And so again, general, we're going to start off with going over the 9 articles that are going to be at the special town meeting for Monday. The select board does have 2 other relatively quick items after that. People are welcome. Obviously, it's a public meeting. You're welcome to stay at that. But if after going over things you want to quietly duck out, we won't hold it against you. And then with that, Kristen, do you want to just take it away? And then we'll pause after each one to see if there are questions or comments.
Absolutely. So what you have before you is a 9-article special town meeting warrant. The first article is a little bit different than what we normally do, which is make an adjustment to the FY26 operating budget. Typically, we wait until May and do line item transfers or try to do the reserve fund transfers. But given how tight the operating budget is this year, since it was level funded from FY25, we do have some adjustments that would be Very important to do because it takes pressure off of the reserve fund, which we can't adjust again till May. And fortunately, we haven't used it yet, but we would need to use it for these items if not approved at town meeting. So the important thing to note about Article 1 is that it has no impact on the taxpayers. We are basically shifting funds from one account to another account within the operating budget that was approved at town meeting in May. So the motion would be, or the vote would be, to transfer 74,000 from ambulance receipts reserved and 51,250 from the line items listed below, which I'll go over individually. And these were all adopted under Article 4, as I mentioned, at the May 2025 town meeting. So it's broken up into two sections just to make it, I think, a little bit clearer to understand which revenues and are going to which expenses. The first is the $74,000 from the ambulance receipts reserved. And the request is to move 68,000 to fire and EMS expenses to fund an advanced EMT training program for all department EMTs, plus the required licensure costing and equipment. And the second is to move $6,000 of that 74 to fire and EMS wages to fund the personnel costs that will be associated with folks in the department moving up from an EMT to an advanced EMT. I know Chief McQuillan is going to be here in about 5 minutes if anyone had questions specific to that article, but I will note on page 2, there's a short description of how funding these services would enhance our existing ambulance services. So right now we have EMTs, we do not have paramedics. Advanced EMTs are a step between paramedics and EMTs. They are allowed to start IVs, administer medications, and monitor patients on a cardiac monitor. None of those things we are currently able to do in town without having mutual aid come in from another community. So this would help boost our care and our ability to respond to those types of needs in town without having to pay another community to come in. And like I said, if you do have specific questions on that one, by the time I finish my probably too long-winded explanation, Chief will probably be here. So that is the first transfer proposed under Article 1. The second set of transfers are proposed from accounts where we're looking at actually a surplus at this time. We actually have such low claims on our workers' comp and our property and liability insurance that there is, even though we level funded it from FY 25, from 25, because the claims were low, we came in at a 0% increase. So we're able to allocate 8,500 that was in the workers' comp insurance line item and 15,000 that was in the property and liability insurance line item, along with, believe it or not, I was really nervous about health insurance and we are doing well. So Scott, you were spot on that one. We can allocate $27,750. If things trend the way they're going right now with health insurance, unless, things change, people come on, new enrollments, which does happen sometimes throughout the year, we anticipate having at least $100,000 surplus in that account at this time, at the end of the year. So I feel comfortable taking $27,750 from that account for a total of $51,250. So the question is, where is this money going? $3,000 is proposed to go to town administrator expenses, so the select board can receive some training at the Mass Municipal Association's annual conference. In the past, that's just been Dee and I that go, but it's a really valuable conference that happens once a year. It's for all 351 cities and towns in Boston, and it will help enhance our ability and their ability to help me and to help the town. So I feel like that is certainly a worthwhile expense. We are in the process of transferring a conservation restriction that the town currently holds to Sudbury Valley trustees. And the purpose of that is so that we can acquire the 2 parcels of land down at Riverbridge that are allocated to the town for $1. There is a cost to transfer that. The town cannot both hold the CR and own the land, or the conservation restriction extinguishes. So Sudbury Valley trustees has graciously agreed to take ownership of that conservation restriction, so it remains intact for us. And that does come at a cost. We do have to do a survey that is $7,000. And we do have to pay approximately $8,000 in legal expenses for that transfer. So that's items 4 and 8 that pertain to the River Run parcels. The good news is the Sudbury Valley trustees is going to pick up the ongoing costs, which are about $15,000 to keep up with the work, any work that needs to be done as part of that CR going forward. So they're essentially splitting the cost with the town because they feel that there is significant value in retaining that land as conservation land. That one's a kind of a wordy one. Do you want me to pause there in case anyone has a question specific to that one?
Go through all the transfers and we'll see where there are questions.
Okay. The number 5 transfer is a request to transfer $6,000 to Article 7 of the May 2025 town meeting, which is the classification and compensation plan. We did fund that at May town meeting to the tune of $7,000 in anticipation of seeking a $6,000 grant from the state through the Community Compact Program. This is a program that was created under Governor Baker and has been funded for almost the last 10 years. Unfortunately, given state budget restraints, the grant was not funded for FY26 to basically everyone's surprise. And so we would need to add that additional funding in order to complete this study. This is a non-union salary study. The last time that we did this was FY20. So if we're able to do it, it'll be about 6 to 7 years outdated. It is pre-COVID, and as everyone knows, the economy, the market has changed substantially in the last 6 years. As I've said before, I feel like we've done a great job addressing union contracts and bringing those up to parity so we can have employee retainment, but we haven't addressed non-union employees yet. So the goal is to do this study to make sure we're addressing any pay disparities there. Number 6 is $19,000 to the treasurer collector expense budget for consulting fees to close out FY25. Item 7 is $3,250 to the fire and EMS expense budget to replenish funds that were used to purchase fire online permitting software. We were actually in a renewal year for our OpenGov, which does all the building permits. It did not include fire permits. So when folks came for a business, they would actually have to physically come in person, and sometimes they would forget or not know that they needed to have the fire permits as well because they're not included online. So it really isn't a one-stop shop or an ability to do online permitting unless you have fire included in there as well. And now we do. So during our renegotiation, we were able to sign for that and get that added at a reduced cost. And 8, I mentioned, has to go with Sudbury Valley trustees for the transfer of the conservation restriction. And item 9 is a reimbursement back to Data Systems, which is our IT budget for $5,000 that we use to purchase the online permitting software. It was a split of the cost between the IT budget and the fire and EMS expense budget. So as I mentioned before, this article doesn't have any impact on taxpayers as it does not propose to raise and appropriate any new funding. It is simply moving items within the budget. We do have to line item budget at every town meeting. So, unfortunately, our opportunities are either to do this transfer at a town meeting or to wait until May and not be able to fund these programs and potentially have shortfalls that would overwhelm the reserve fund. So that's Article 1. It's a long one, sorry.
It is a long one. There's a bunch of details to it, but as you point out, it's mostly, well, it is moving money around from one place to another. It has, again, no impact on the tax bills. Are there questions here or online about one?
Number 9 is the same.
Can you just come up to the mic so we can capture you? Thank you.
Can we name and address
Mhm.
legibly?
Yep. Oh, actually, if you could just put your name as well on the form for the next.
Dave Bratton, Boylston Road. I got a question. Is item 9 here is the same as the item number
7.
7, right?
The total cost was split between 2 departments so that we could fund it.
Oh, it's just a department.
So it's just the department.
Okay.
Yep. So it's refunding both of those budgets
Gotcha.
and they're
Okay.
just in two different departments.
Great. Why don't you talk about Article 2?
Okay. Article 2 is the request to replace the Berlin Memorial School roof. This would actually be a $350,000 transfer out of the capital stabilization fund if approved. The capital stabilization fund currently has a balance of $544,838. It was created specifically for these types of purposes for larger capital repairs. So we don't overwhelm either the operating budget with capital requests from the district or free cash. So this does propose to replace the asphalt shingle roof at BMS. It's a section of the roof is 25,860 square feet and is original to the building. So it has exceeded its useful life and replacement was recommended before there's significant damage to the decking and the building interior. So this would remove the existing roof and install a 50-year roof. And the estimated cost is $336,750, not including any potential small deck repairs that may have to be made, which they won't be able to know until they get inside. And there's an additional cost per square footage for that. So that's why we have added a little bit in and brought it to $350. If those funds are not used, they remain with the town. They cannot be used for a different purpose. And this article would work by the district submitting invoices to my office and our office in order to pay. So this is not funding that gets directly transferred to the school, but rather we manage the finance portion of it. Any questions on Article 2?
No, one of my reasons really push it to a fall town meeting really had to do with timing, is that doing the roof when school is not in session is usually easier to coordinate. If it doesn't pass till May, they're not going to be able to turn it around for a June or July sort of construction project. Doing it now gives the chance to do it in a more orderly and planful process. It also, it's a large number and, you know, we've had a lot of emotion around school budgets over years. And this is, you know, as you point out, if it doesn't get done, the building falls apart more. And so to just make sure this large number doesn't get somehow caught up or confused with other numbers when the budget season comes up.
Absolutely. And as you said, you know, if it's a small repair and it goes, it just creates more costs down the line.
And it does require, because it's coming from stabilization, a 2/3 vote.
It does. Yep.
On Article 3. Sorry, there's a hand.
Oh. Hand up.
Kevin. Do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
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 Okay, perfect.
Hi,
Thank you.
it's Claire,
Yep.
it's Claire Pond.
Claire,
Can you
yep.
hear me
Hi,
okay?
Claire, we can hear you.
Hi, good. I just had a question on the roof thing. I don't know, maybe I seem to recall us giving money to the school a few years ago for this very same purpose. I don't recall what the amount was, but didn't we vote that in a few years ago? Some, to give the school quite a bit of money. I think it was quite a bit of money to redo the roof.
Not to my knowledge, there was discussed at last year's budget cycle, there was a capital request, either last year or the year before, that was put in for it, but we didn't have the quote in time to put it through the full budget process. So it was removed from the capital plan at that time.
Okay. All right. I just seem to recall us voting it in at one point, and then when we asked the school, you know, what happened to the money, they said they used it for other things. And I was happy to hear that this time it's not, you have control over the money in terms of that what it's being spent for. So we appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah, Claire, I think that was 400,000 that showed up on a budget without any type of detail or information. It was just a random number that
Okay.
was put in under capital, but then it was pulled out at the town meeting because there was no information to validate that expense.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you. I knew I had seen something about the roof, and I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
One additional thing to clarify also is that even though The school doesn't have to notify us when they make changes to the capital plan legally, because that is a lump sum of funding that goes to them. The last 2 years at least, they have notified us and asked us if they were making a small change in what the capital plan was used for an item. It was used for a slightly different capital item, and they submitted that request to our office. We communicated it to the select board, the FinCom, and the capital committee, and everybody was appreciative that they kept
Great.
us in the loop on that change.
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anything else on Article 2, or are we good to move on?
I think we're good.
All right. Article 3 is the acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15A, relative to the transfer of property for the purpose of constructing low or moderate income housing. And the purpose of this would be that property transferred specifically, town-owned property transferred specifically for this purpose would no longer need a 2/3 vote. It would need a simple majority vote. So acceptance of this law would allow us to transfer the care, custody, management, and control to another municipal board, which likely would be the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, because they are the most appropriate body to handle affordable housing. And presently, a 2/3 majority is required, as I mentioned, for transferring any land right now for a different purpose or to one municipal board to another. So this would make that process simpler to enable affordable housing if we have an appropriate parcel that is identified to do so. It does not affect anything on this warrant, just as a clarification, because there is a later article here regarding 15 Lincoln. That would still be subject to the 2/3 vote, because I know that question has come up before. Any Article 3 questions? Can you come up, please?
Is this basically a mini equivalent of Trump's effort to repeal the filibuster law? To make it easier to get things through?
It was something actually that legal recommended when they knew that the housing trust was set up, and it's something that the state has offered because we are being encouraged to build affordable housing, and
All right.
they want to
Will-
simplify the process in as
will
much as they
this-
can.
Will this allow the town to transfer conservation, another town only?
Well, of
Obviously,
course
it's
not.
just related to this particular issue.
Yep, just for this
Just-
specific purpose.
Yeah,
Okay.
just for this.
All right, thanks.
Did you have a question as well?
I do, but I can't really, I don't know how to get it out.
Feel free to reach out to me, Kim, if you,
Or if you
Come
think
up
of
with
it
what you need
later,
or
let
later
us-
on.
Yeah, later, let us know.
but you know where to find me, so yeah.
Perfect. All right, then I will move on to Article 4, which is another acceptance of Mass General Law. This time it would be Chapter 90, Section 17C, relative to a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on any roadway in town inside a thickly settled or business district when it is not a state highway. So obviously we can't take action on state highways. So we're hoping that acceptance of this MGL would help address some of the traffic impacts and speeding in town. You know, given our close proximity, as everyone knows, to 2 major highways, traffic frequently now gets routed through town, especially thanks to Waze when there's accidents. And the current speed limit on all unposted roads right now is 40 miles per hour. So this would help us establish that 25-mile-per-hour speed limit in a thickly settled or business district zone in town. One caveat with this is that we would have to work with Mass DOT to get signage approved to put on those roadways. So there is some questions regarding enforcement until we are able to put appropriate signage up, but this would enable us to take the first step towards making that change. And then we work with Mass DOT to get signage and, you know, meet the regulations that they have for us. Any questions on Article 4? All right. I'll move on to Article 5, if that works. The Article 5 is a proposed amendment to the town meeting bylaw for annual town meeting only. It is to see if the town will vote to amend sections 1 and 9 of Article 2 relative to the town meeting bylaw for our annual town meeting that's held in May on the first Monday of every year. So the first request is simply to strike the time from the bylaw. Right now, it requires us to hold it at 7:30 on the first Monday of May. Striking the time would allow the select board to set the meeting time each year as appropriate, depending on the nature of the meeting. It still would be required to be held the first Monday of May. The time would just be set. It would go on the warrant that gets mailed out to every household and up on the website, so folks would know what time that meeting would start. The second change is to add a time limit on speakers for one question, or for each question rather. So the request is to limit speakers to a maximum of 3 minutes on any specific item, unless the time is extended by a vote of town meeting. One important note would be, because we had some questions on this, the time limit would not apply to the presentations given by the sponsors of the article. The purpose of this is to try to enable town meeting to flow a little bit faster and more smoothly, as sometimes you get multiple people asking the same question or speaking for longer than 3 minutes. I do point out that it can be extended if it's someone who's speaking on something in the meeting does feel like they want to hear more. Any questions on Article 5? No?
Who is sponsoring this?
This article is sponsored by the select board.
The select board. The only criticism I have of it is that, I've been a member of the legislature and there's no limit. People talk and it can be irritating. But the idea of a person to be able to get up and express themselves, let's say they can't express themselves succinctly and articulately, and they want to ramble on a little bit, like me, for example. I just want to take a second thought about shutting people off. And the second thing, that something's always stuck in my mind, I read something by Ben Franklin one time. He went to he was an ambassador to the Indians, the Iroquois League, and he was fascinated about how they would meet, the 5 tribes of New York, and they would discuss something from war to everything. And they always had a unanimous decision in the end, because they would get up, someone would speak, didn't matter how long, and he estimated that silence would be for a minimum of 5 minutes. Nobody would say anything to give that person a chance to think, did I say that right? And the idea is they were listening and not trying to rush through. I mean, I just think that open meetings, open dialogue, and the right to speak is part of our democracy. And I think we ought to think very carefully before you start limiting Mr. Smith from having a chance to speak as long as he or she wants about anything they want about a relevant subject. So I just give a second thought to this. It's pretty serious.
From my standpoint, I don't think we're stopping someone from being able to speak. I think we want everyone to be able to speak. And I think some of the problems that happen at town meetings is when you get someone who talks, and if they talk for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, that other people don't feel they have the opportunity to speak, because really at the end of the night, when we all get to 11, 11:30 and 12 at night, those motions aren't getting the discussion and thoughtfulness that really some of the ones earlier on. And so we're still going to let, I mean, anyone can speak. And when we start getting, again, we had at the second town meeting, we had 500 or so people up there. If people start talking at 10 and 15 minutes at a time, you're going to be there for a week and a half. And so the intent is to keep and really try to get people to be succinct and on topic for the items so that more people can speak.
Well, and the problem is too, is that if someone gets up and starts rambling, I guarantee you there's going to be 2 people deep in the line that will say, I move the question. And then this way, all the other people that were in line don't get an opportunity to say what's on their mind. So if you limit it, then hopefully more people get a chance to speak and more people won't feel intimidated, and there won't be the, we've said this enough. Can you please just sit down? So.
Yeah. And
That's
for
a
most,
practical and realistic view to look at, as opposed to idealistic.
yeah. And the other thing is, for those of us who do have a little trouble speaking, 3 minutes is forever. Forever.
And for those of us who don't, 3 minutes is barely a blip in time and we've got the entire night. So there you go.
Thanks. Thank you. Good. Yep.
I do have to say my name or
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
I'm Cecilia Washburn. How would we enforce this? Because it's well and good to say like 3 minutes and you're up, but when someone is up there really giving it their all, I think we've all been to talks and stuff where someone is kind of pushing them along. Have we thought that through?
The moderator is the one who ultimately enforces it.
Okay.
And I think it would start with sort of some more gentle reminding that your time is up. And I don't imagine that we'll have an officer standing there and at 3 minutes and 1 second, they're dragging you away. I think it will be, I'm hoping there's some humanity to some of this stuff where someone can like
Yeah.
finish their sentence or say thank you and
Okay.
not just cut off.
Thank
And
you.
we'll look into it too. I know the school committee,
Yeah.
right? You have they have a giant honking clock that, yeah, so
You know, and you wrap it up, or you're out for 3 minutes, and then.
so we'll be a gentler, kindler version and we won't go launching over the table to, you know.
Oh, I actually was kind of advocating for the opposite. I don't know how long 3 minutes is.
So,
Yeah,
so basically whichever select board person is on the end will have that responsibility closest to the mic. All right, I'm sitting in the
Yeah.
middle.
And there are cell phone apps and there are
Right.
all kinds of things.
I
so
like
there
the
are a
good
lot
old
of ways
fashioned
to-
sign.
Yep.
We've
Yeah,
seen it
yeah,
before
use
where you hold
red,
up a yellow
green,
sign
yellow,
that says
yeah.
1 minute left. And then you hold up a red sign that says 0 minutes left. And then if you have to make a comment after that to slow folks down, that would be at the discretion of the moderator. Or stop folks rather.
Yeah,
Alright.
the other thing is also a fairness thing, I think, because some people get cut off, some people don't. If you have a deadline, everybody's held to the same rules.
Anything else on Article 5? From online or in the audience? No?
No,
All right, well, we will move on to Article 6, which is the transfer and disposition of 15 Lincoln Road. Lisa, would you like to handle this one as the housing trust?
Sure. I handed out to those in the audience, the Housing Trust did an informational session. If folks want to go watch that, they can. But, some information will be available at town meeting. There's a financial impact statement, there's a list of facts, and the project is elaborated on a bit. But basically, it is the same one that we brought forth at the May town meeting. It was so close that the trust, and it was at the end of the night, so the trust really wanted to talk about it again because they think it's a great project. And we'd really like to see it go forward. It's basically taking 15 Lincoln Road, transferring it to the Housing Trust, who would then do an RFP to try to get someone to do a community build there to do a single family affordable home. We have done a lot of work in the interim. We did a perk test on the property, making sure it was viable for this type of project. We talked to two of the committees that came up that night were the Recreation Committee and the Council on Aging Committee, whether they were consulted about the property. Neither one wishes to use the building and no other municipal ideas came forward in the interim. There's also a concept plan in there from Habitat for Humanity for how they would put the house together. Should they answer the RFP, they are very interested. So we know that at least one person would be interested in doing this project. Basically, it would take it off the town rolls, a property that needs a ton of work to be usable again. Long-term, to get people back in there would probably be in the neighborhood of $200,000 to restore it properly. Any funding for this project would not come out of taxes. It would come out of Community Preservation Act funds that are specifically set aside for affordable housing and cannot be used for anything else. But ideally, we would transfer the property and maybe give a little seed money, depending on what the trust decided, to whatever organization, given that they would be a nonprofit, to help move the project along. But whoever takes on the project would then fund the majority of the project when they receive the property. It requires a 2/3 vote to pass. So every vote matters. If folks want to see this coming forward, they need to come and vote.
I think this is more than just a priority of the housing trust. This is a motion from the select board. And so the select board also sees this as a priority in town to get, again, help get properties. Both, I think it hits several things, as you said. It puts something back on the tax rolls. It renovates historic property in town, and so it keeps it so it can remain. There was a third one that's now totally escaping.
Historical restriction.
Right.
I hadn't mentioned that. We would make sure that there was a historical restriction on it so that the historical exterior remained to the building.
But the affordable housing part was the third part about this. And so it renovates something, it puts something on the tax roll and puts another affordable house sort of in town, in the inventory of town.
Yeah, and this would be a truly affordable house. A lot of the houses that we have that are affordable, I think if you really looked at what what that meant, you would realize it's not super affordable. This is an actual affordable home.
Question can come forward.
Have would the abutters of that property be able to purchase the property? Would they have an option to do that if they wanted to?
If the abutters wanted to purchase the property and renovate it into affordable housing to be sold to an affordable developer, they could do that.
Oh, so it has to be affordable housing no matter what.
Yes.
You can't just sell them the land so that they could.
Yes.
Yeah, if the housing trust puts it out for an RFP, yeah, it would have to be, we would specify that the property needed to be used for affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you.
Walter.
Yep.
Where do we stand with respect to the state's required percentage of affordable housing we have to have in town? Number one. Number two, can't we just, what if we just vote and sell it to a developer to do anything they want? We'd have money in. You talk about the Community Preservation Act, that's taxpayer money regardless if it isn't on our tax, it's on a tax base eventually. So it might disguise it, but can't we just sell it and put the money in the general fund or frankly, put it into protecting open space?
There are actually inherent costs to selling it also. We lose control. You wouldn't necessarily want, they wouldn't want a historical restriction on it. It's a small property. It's going to require something like a Presby system. It's the house requires a ton of work. So the end cost, we would end up sort of with nothing. We won't have a house that's protected. We won't have an affordable home. We will just get rid of it for a small one-time fee. That it's going to be hard to sell because of the amount of work that it requires.
So we could sell it and
You
get a
could.
fee, no matter if it's $100,000, and as opposed to dipping into the Community Preservation Act, which is paid for by taxpayers. And the other part of the first part of my question is, where do we stand with
Okay.
respect to, I think it's a
We-
10%
Yeah.
requirement? Where do
I
we
actually,
stand?
I have a fact right here. Is selling it on the open market financially better for the town? Not necessarily. While a sale could result in a one-time payment, the town would continue to carry insurance, maintenance, and liability costs until the transaction is complete. The building's condition, site constraints, and lack of utilities limit likely sale value.
And then from the housing, we're above our 40B requirements
yeah.
currently.
Yeah.
And this is just a single unit, but again, there are other houses already being built. And so it will be then longer before we potentially drop below that
Yeah.
number or have to do something else.
I say all this recognizing that, I spent my career protecting Berlin, and now there are people that look at it as a cash cow and the developers are really killing us, but, and it's unfortunate, but I don't, have questions of whether this is the way to address the issue.
Well, and plus too, Walter, that acreage is only 0.75, so you can't put gigantic house on it. You're pretty much limited as to what could go on it. So I think it's an opportunity for Berlin to do something right and something that is good, to maybe give this to the housing trust, the housing authority, to maybe build an affordable house, whether it's for a veteran or something like that. So, I look at this as more goodwill than bringing money into the town. If there's one thing that we could do, wouldn't this be a nice thing?
Okay, I'll wait.
And the CPA funds, because CPA exists, we have to put 10% of the CPA funds automatically go to affordable housing projects where they sit there. So, you know, that 10% exists and goes to that no matter what. This is just a really good way to use it.
Yeah, but heck, if they can build affordable housing on it, they can build a house on it. I mean, I understand it's a small lot. I'm well aware of Board of Health issues with Title V and all that other stuff. I cut my teeth on that in town, but, I just, okay, thanks.
Others?
I don't think so.
Article 7?
Article 7 authorizes the select board to acquire any no fee easements on Carter Street, Central Street, and Woodward Ave for what is known as the Complete Streets Road Improvement Project. The town received a $500,000 grant from the state to do road and sidewalk improvements in the area of Carter, Central, and Woodward Ave. This article would give the select board the authority to acquire easements that are necessary to complete the project. Because the project is just moving into preliminary design at this time, the easements have not been determined. We still intend to have a public forum to have a discussion on the proposed preliminary design. I did actually speak with the engineers yesterday, and they are hoping to have the preliminary design wrapped up by December so that we can hold a public meeting. And this, because of the timing, we didn't want to wait until May to give the select board the authority. Now, if it turns out to be a fee easement, that would have to come back to town meeting for appropriation. So this would, just to be clear, be for any type of agreement that could be negotiated for an easement to facilitate a sidewalk, to facilitate the road work at no cost to the town. Any questions on Article 7? Okay. Article 8 is a zoning bylaw amendment of section 444.3 of the zoning bylaws regarding drive-up facilities at highway and regional shopping centers. And I will just say that I understand the issue of drive-throughs has come up before town meetings several times previously. So just to make this one very clear, these drive-through allowances would apply only to Highland Commons and the Solomon Pond Mall. Any questions on Article
Well,
8?
I don't know if you want to start talking about some of the distinction between Article 8 and Article 9, which look remarkably similar.
Sure.
And we can take some questions in a moment. Just, I was good thinking that we'll take them sort of as a together thing since they're
I
similar.
can do 9.
Yeah.
Because Article 9 is mine as a citizen's petition. So the history on this is that, as Kristen said, there's been multiple attempts and unfortunately multiple failures to now add drive-throughs in Berlin. Every surrounding town has a drive-through. So every revenue just goes streaming out the street to the next town. So I had months ago approached the planning board and told them what I was going to do, that I was going to try to push through changes in these bylaws to now allow drive-throughs and get rid of, in my opinion, and I can say this because I'm a resident, even though I'm sitting at the big girl table, to get rid of such an archaic law that basically stopped revenue from coming into this town. If you look up at Highland, there's not one, there's not two, but there's 3 establishments that could never come to Berlin because of this bylaw. So as I chugged forward with this, and I'm very grateful to all the parents and folks that I met who signed my petition, I presented it to planning board and they said, but wait, let us also do it. So as you can see, 8 and 9 are strikingly similar to that. If Article 8 passes, then I will stand up and I will pass mine over. So there won't be 2 out there. There won't be 2 competing ones, but basically both were and just had the intent for And we couldn't call it Solomon Pond and we couldn't call it Highland Commons because in the event that changed, well, we'd be here many years later redoing it. So that's why we're calling it the overlay districts. It does not include the Rotary. Let me repeat that again. Not include the Rotary, nor does it include Duncan's, nor does it include Riverbridge. We are talking ends of the town, easy off the highway, easy back on the highway for both entrances. So hoping to avoid the, we don't need no stinking drive-throughs, let's keep Berlin. Looking at that, I looked at from a financial impact and thought that this was just silly that we don't allow this. So it truly was a race between planning board and I'm hoping that by the citizens petition that I put on, it moved planning board to move just a little bit quicker to get this done.
And if I could add one thing, when a citizen's petition is submitted with the required number of signatures and the town clerk certifies those signatures, it's required to go on the town meeting warrant. So that's why
Oh.
you do see.
And last.
And last.
And last, yes.
So even though
Yeah.
Pegs was in
Pegs
first,
was in first.
it-
I get to go
it has
last.
to go at the end of the, it has to go. Not because it's Peg, but because it's a citizen petition.
Right. And we really tried to get information from both the town of Hudson and the Department of Revenue on how much money is coming in at Highland Commons through the Starbucks and the Panera drive-throughs, both of which wanted to go on the Berlin side because the setup was better for them. So we lost that revenue. I can tell you anecdotally, Starbucks brings in over $50,000 a year in and of itself. Our meals tax is less than $50,000 a year for every restaurant in town.
And I can tell you that the cost of an average meal at Chick-fil-A is $14.10. So you know what, if you multiply that by a certain amount of people times the 0.75 and June, before I do any math, you know, Peg math, I will confer with you on the exact number for that. Plus two, here's a little fun fact. Mass DOT estimates that 80,000 cars a day go through the interchange of 495 and 290. 80,000. Do times 7, we'll do Peg math because it's easy. You have 500,000 cars a week. Think of 2% of those cars whizzing off, going to Chick-fil-A, paying $14, $10 a meal, putting it in their car and whizzing back on the highway. How much money is now sitting in Hudson's pocket that Berlin never has a chance to get because of this bylaw?
I think Starbucks is more of a,
Starbucks, here's a fun fact about Starbucks. So you can tell I did my research. Starbucks on average sells 500 cups of something a day. So think about it, 500 cups and do it times $10, which I think is average. Starbucks person at the end of the table, is that an average cost?
I'd say 6.
Okay.
6 to 8 at this time.
Right, so 6 to 8, so do the math, 500 cups times, and plus you get a snack.
Unless
So-
you get hot tea.
Unless you get
tea's
hot tea.
cheaper.
So multiply that times 10, multiply that times 360 days, which they're open, take off time for the holiday, and multiply that times 0.75, June? 75% do we get?
0.75.
0.75? That's a chunk of money that we're missing out on because of this bylaw. So again, there's other facts that I'll share with you on Monday regarding people who stood up before and said it's going to cause air pollution and it's going to cause people to get fat because, it's bad food. I can counter every one of those claims for there. So this is truly, my intent was a financial uptick potentially. I am not promising that there are vendors at the door beating down Berlin wanting to come here. But right now, they don't even have a chance to talk to us. They look at our bylaw and they just drive right by with the other 80,000 cars. At least this is an opportunity for somebody to stop and have a conversation. With the Solomon Pond Mall, I can tell you I was in touch with their general manager. Not one, two. Two buyers for that mall walked away. Why? Say it with me. Because there's a restriction on the drive-through. So that's why I pushed for my citizens petition, and that's why, believe me, Carolyn is here from Planning Board. She can tell you I was pretty much a thorn in their side through the entire process to get this moving. Does that help? Oh,
Get your
yes.
come,
Hate to say it, Peg, but you changed my mind 180 degrees.
yeah, say,
Adjourn the meeting.
I'm shocked.
Thanks.
What? You see my face? The jaw just dropped.
yeah,
Yeah, I think you, Walter, that's worth saying into the microphone so the folks can hear that at home.
I see. I
Mhm.
mean,
Oh, he's gonna do it.
Peg, you changed my mind 180 degrees.
Thank you, Mr.
I hate
Bickford.
to say it, but you did.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It feels good, doesn't it?
um,
Mhm.
I mean, I personally don't use drive-throughs. I don't care much for drive-throughs, but I also, every time I'm up at the Highland Commons that I see the line at those 3 drive-throughs on the Hudson side, knowing they wanted to be in Berlin and that, 3/4% of all of those could be coming into our coffers to do, even if we didn't raise costs at all anymore, that could lower our taxes a tiny bit or give us something more to do. And so we've probably, the horse is probably already out of the barn. Those 2 buildings are not about to move to Berlin if we pass this. But I think there's a lot of opportunities over at Solomon Pond. And it's not just the drive-throughs, it's the more valuable that property is, the more it pays in taxes. And so if that mall becomes more viable, it can attract, the drive-throughs attract better retail establishments in there. That comes and helps the town as well.
Absolutely. And I had a great conversation with the development director at Benderson, and apparently, they develop malls all over the country. They're a premier developer. They rate their malls on a scale of A, B, C, and maybe D, I'm not sure. They said this is an A property. This is one of the best malls that they have. It's a top-notch producer for them, so they put a lot of time and effort into it. If anyone has gone to the Starbucks, not gonna lie, I frequent there often. They've seen the giant wall and it looks like a roller coaster as you come around the corner. They would not have had to build that on the Berlin side. They make so much money that they were willing to put in, and I can't tell you how much retaining wall costs, but it's not cheap. So that giant wall, the setup over by where Muya is, was where people were most interested in going, according to Benderson.
And so that's 8 to 9. There are just other questions about town meeting coming up on Monday. And the timing is
6:30.
No.
Six. It's 6, yeah. So it's an earlier town meeting. And so the meeting will start at 6. Our hope is in May town meeting. How early it starts will all be based on, assuming this passes, will be based on sort of how many articles, but, starting at 7:30, you get to 11 o'clock in the blink of an eye. And if we can start a little bit earlier, there's a good chance that we don't have to have that 11 o'clock vote of whether or not that we're done by then and we all can get a decent night's sleep.
And I know it's really, really tough for parents. They have to go. They don't go because they want to.
Right.
They go because their kids have to go home.
Right. Yeah, it's when the meetings run long, yeah. Well, I thank you, folks. The other things we're going to do at the select board, and you're welcome to stay and you're welcome to quietly step out. We're going to figure out which one of us are presenting which one of the articles at the meeting. And we actually will have a discussion on the cost of living adjustment for the non-union employees.
Which would you prefer to start with?
Thanks, everyone.
Let's do we have
Yes, we'll do
the
that.
piece of
Remember,
paper
if
in
you
front
think
of us.
questions show up on Monday, bring a friend, bring 2,
Yep.
and a cushion.
mean, yeah, we almost do
you.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and
Yeah.
So
we're sort of done, right?
Well, I mean, there's some specifically, like I can see you talking about the operating budget. I can see Lisa talking about the transfer of property. See, look, I even wrote, should be Lisa.
Okay,
So that means,
that's fine.
so if I get 1 and Lisa's get 3, does that mean you get 2?
You get to do the school.
The school roof.
No.
You don't want to do the school roof? I'll do school roof. I like school roof. I'll do 1 and 2.
All right, you can do 1 and 2.
Okay, well,
Okay, and I'm 3.
Lisa will do 3.
okay, so
One is
one is Scott,
Yeah.
2 is Scott.
Yep.
3 is Lisa, 3 is Lisa.
Yep.
Okay.
Peg, how about you get 4 then? Speed limit.
You got it.
Okay.
And Chief is
Because you
here
want
to
people to
back
school
you.
by your house anyway, right?
Yeah.
Peg
Yeah.
on that one too. Chief can back you up if people have questions on this one from the audience.
I think you should do 5, Scott, because
Okay.
I like I think the way you presented it
Yep.
was good.
Yeah.
I'll do 5. That puts you at 6. I know you've been in the face of 6 all along, but
Yeah, housing trust
Yep.
get up too,
right, actually, you can make the motion and have someone else, the housing
Yeah.
trust, do the piece.
because I've been clear that
Yep. Does that give,
So that leaves Article 7 because 8 and 9 belong to the planning board and the citizen who petitioned.
so that means Peg, you get 7? So you have 2?
Sure.
There,
Okay.
that's it.
done.
Easy peasy. If only they were all like this.
Well, and I think the reason we also do, and we didn't ask that, but the reason we're doing this is
Is-
these are 7 items that are not going to be on Maytown meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, and some of them deserve some attention and some conversation and if the striking of the 7:30 passes on Monday, what's the odds that it's in place for May, that we can actually do town meeting?
It depends on how fast we can get the changes approved.
Right.
You probably know that. We're usually talking a year,
Well, does that just goes to the AG?
but it goes to the AG with everything. So sometimes if there's a more challenging one, it slows. Sometimes they'll release a partial letter and say, hey, we're still working
Well,
on
I would
that.
expect, like, if we were doing May, I would expect by December we would be through, so
Year from now.
Maybe.
maybe,
Maybe,
a
yeah.
firm maybe. It would be really nice, wouldn't it?
Be nice if maybe we
think-
can find a way to push it because
Well, we
it's
could do the
not
other
the type of
thing
year where
too.
there's so many other towns also put it in May. There's, 100, 200 towns that are all submitting things. In November, December, there's not as many things going in front of them, so.
Right, the
Yeah.
warrants, well,
Right.
there are, most cities and towns have them. They're much shorter
Yep.
warrants, so it's much less. Although I will say,
And-
most cities and towns now use fall town meeting for bylaws.
Yeah.
So that's the only
Yeah.
challenge there.
Well, it will be what it is.
Hopefully people will see, they'll enjoy coming at 6 rather than 7:30.
Yep.
Yes.
And it will pass.
In the olden days, we did a special town meeting before town meeting, just so we could start early.
I
And
was just
found
gonna
things to do
say,
things on.
Could do
we could
if
do
it
this.
passes.
Yep,
I
yep,
think
yep,
that's
yep,
reasonable.
yep.
Go, that's the will of town meeting and do that if it passes.
And that was town council's recommendation, if that
Yep.
causes a lot of consternation, people are concerned. I did want to note one thing on Article 7 before we move on.
Mhm.
I know there has already been a lot of debate and discussion about the complete streets,
Mhm.
specifically in regard to where the sidewalk is going on Woodward Ave.
Mhm.
I
That's,
spoke with the moderator. That's outside of the purview of
Right.
this article. That this is not to debate the design. This is
Right.
actually to acquire any easements we need to do the project. So just
Yep.
a warning, my understanding is speaking from the moderator that he will not be taking comments on the project as a whole.
Well, and I can mention that this is not to debate the design. It is only
That-
to gather the easements.
Right, no matter what the
Yeah.
design ultimately does,
Right.
it
We're
allows
still
us to
gonna need to-
negotiate, right?
Right.
Yep.
And the nice thing is in putting in all 3 of those streets, regardless of where we land, we have access to whatever we need within the project space or the project scope to try to acquire.
Yep. So cost of living,
Okay, so I gave a rather detailed spiel last night at the Personnel Committee, which can certainly be watched. I will pare it down a bit for here, but obviously questions if anyone has them. You do have 2 handouts with you this evening. One is a talking point list, and the other is a wonderful chart comparison that Dee put together on the rising costs of health insurance and how it compares to the annual COLA and at
Mhm.
what point you actually either break even or lose money. So I will start. The recommendation that I had made and was approved by the Finance Committee last night was a 3% COLA and a 2% one-time market adjustment, which is equal to approximately 1 step increase. I say that because until we redo our classification and compensation plan, the distance between the steps is a little off. Some are like 1.8, 1.9. So giving you an approximation, as June always says, estimate.
Right.
She's absolutely right. So I quickly went over some of the municipal salary trends that we're seeing out there. There is a massive shortage of municipal workers statewide. Starting salaries have increased dramatically when you follow MMA. And when you look at the fact that you're having to replace very experienced employees with younger employees who can demand a higher salary because of the market, and then you have to pay out benefits to employees that may leave if we're not comparable to other comparable cities and towns, employee retention becomes more key and is more cost effective and better for the organization and the community to keep that knowledge going on, institutional knowledge going on. So how did I arrive at 3% for a
And-
COLA?
And 3% plus 2%. So you're talking about a 5% raise.
That's correct.
For everybody.
That's correct. For
Non-union.
non-union.
Right, well, yeah.
And non-contractual. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, although those contracts that we just negotiated for the chiefs and myself are tied to the COLA,
Yep.
but not the 2%.
Yep.
So the COLA, the reason I got to 3% is I looked at the anticipated municipal COLAs so far for FY 27. MMA, the Mass Municipal Human Resources Association polls cities and towns. That list is about a third to a half filled out right now because it still is early. I looked at the range of COLAs that towns that have plugged in so far are doing. It is anywhere from 1% to 5% with an average of 3% at this time. That also dovetails with Social Security COLA, which is 2.8% right now for FY 26, but has averaged 3.1% for the last 10 years. And finally, the Worcester Regional Pension COLA was 3% for FY 25 and FY 26. And I mentioned a little bit about offsetting the health insurance rates. I can go more into that if you would like, but I just wanted to talk about the 2% briefly for a moment. We are in a year where, knock on wood, if we get our $6,000 on Monday night, we will be doing a new classification and compensation plan. The current plan will be 7 years old by the time it's fully implemented in FY 27. As I mentioned, it's pre-COVID. And the only adjustments that have been made were nominal COLA adjustments during this period, which were 2% in both 25 and 26 fiscal years. So if this does get approved Monday, we're anticipating completion by spring. And this is one step in the direction of trying to spread that cost over multiple years, because I do not know of a position that is not at least 2% underfunded in my estimation. So this would help bridge that gap. We know there are also going to be some positions that are woefully underfunded, and we're going to have to do larger market increases on a dollar scale for those particular positions. But this helps spread the pain, if you will, a little bit over a couple of fiscal years. So the total cost for this would be, again, approximately $71,000 for FY 27, including both the 3% COLA and the 2% market adjustment. I recognize that sounds like a large number, but I would like to point out, I'm sure that both chiefs will appreciate this. When we did the police union contract adjustment in FY 26, it was approximately $180,000 for the 9 officers in the department. And when we did fire union in 25, it was approximately $68,000 for the 4 full-time employees.
How much does how many employees is the 71,000?
That
Right.
covers
Yeah,
I
the
I
number.
want the
I didn't
number,
count, I'm sorry.
the number.
I was getting the number.
can't-
I think
that's
it's-
what I was
If you're
trying
gonna
to-
use that as a statistic, you need
That is a,
it makes more impact, I
Yep.
think,
Yep.
if you
that's
do
a
that.
very valid point. If you want to talk or answer questions and give me a minute, I can pull that up for you.
So here's my concern. I will absolutely never begrudge a raise to our folks, ever, ever, ever. I can only imagine the amount of work that they do. Last year, we were pretty draconian on the town and we stripped a lot away. I don't know what this year will look like. I'm kind of sensing that we're gonna go not as draconian, but close to it. So where is this money gonna come from? Because honestly, as a taxpayer, I'm tired of my taxes going up. I'm tired of another part of the budget that just comes in and swoops of people come in and vote for it and off they go. So, you know, once again, I can almost kind of see this as an us versus them that we're setting up, but what aren't we going to do to put that 71K in there plus any other supplemental budget requests that come in? That's a chunk, a giant chunk of money that we just don't have.
I will argue that the 2.5% that we are eligible and able and do go up every year, plus new growth, would cover that. I believe that, and I understand the school increases, and I feel that the budget process was fairly done and justified this past fiscal year. But I feel like we shortchanged the town. And I don't think we can continue to almost fully fund the school budget and not look at town needs. I think there has to be more of a balance in the budget. I think that's really critical. I also feel like we've
We're
done.
not the audience for that because we don't set the school budget.
Well, it also costs more money to lose people and have to bring new people in.
1000% agreeance on that, but you know, the hard part is that we do our part, and our commissions and committees and departments are awesome, and they stick to the 2.5% or very close to it, but unfortunately you have a gigantic wild card that we can't control, and even though we can recommend a budget of $10, somebody else proposes a budget of $20, and just on the fact that people show up in mass because they're told to and say, then we hurt our people by going low to try and do what is right for the town when we have squat control over the other.
Except
part.
at town meeting, at every opportunity where they had a chance at lower taxes or higher taxes.
I know.
They voted on
Yeah.
higher
And
taxes.
This for
I
me
know.
too, if
I know.
The voters spoke, they don't
we
want
have
lower
to,
taxes.
we have to take care of our buildings, we have to take care
I
of our
know.
employees, we have to, and unfortunately, you know, inflation happens here too, and all of the things.
I know.
It's not inexpensive to live in Massachusetts. It's not inexpensive to live in any community that is this close to Boston. Our taxes are right on par with the rest of the folks in our area, or sometimes lower.
Mhm.
I think we are doing the best we can, but we cannot continue to shortchange our employees.
I know.
We just can't do it, because it's the same as letting our buildings go year after year. You end up with a bigger disaster later.
I know, but I know that someone will stand up and say, where is
And-
this
and
money
they
coming
can-
from? And I'm tired of it
they-
coming out of my wallet.
They can absolutely stand up and say that.
Yep.
And then town meeting can decide what they're gonna vote on, but we can't make those decisions here based on what one person is gonna stand up and say at town meeting, because nobody's
Yep.
ever gonna be happy with what we set for taxes, ever,
No,
ever,
and
ever.
again, and last year, not only at town meeting did people always vote for higher taxes and lower taxes when they had the opportunity. When I did all of my stuff, like, okay, tell me what you don't want, you know, what do you want to cut? What do you want the town to
Nobody
not
wants
to do anymore?
Nothing
People
came in.
were, well, not only nothing came in, people were incensed that I was even asking those questions,
I
you know? The idea that we would cut rec, or we would lower council on aging, or that we would, you know, close the transfer station, were all just so out of the realm. And I'm fine with the way it turned out. It's just that, you know, you can't say, I need more services. I want quality people working for this town, and I don't want to pay any money for it. You know,
And
I want a
you-
Rolls Royce, but I'm only willing to pay for $5 a year. You know, it's just not, and it's not, and we don't have a Rolls Royce town, actually, you know, we have I don't want to do say other brand names, but we have a solid, everyone is hardworking, and the employees, people put in their hours pretty well. There is not waste out there. I
Mhm.
challenge anyone out there listening, you know, if you have an idea of where there is waste in this town that we could do without, I'd love to hear it. I advocated for lots of cuts last year. You don't even have to come out. Talk to me and I will advocate for cutting waste somewhere, but I don't
And-
see it.
We run, even from a stopping point, we run really lean.
Yeah.
We
Really
run too lean.
It's too lean. People are very burned out, and I know that may not resonate with folks because I know
Yeah.
other folks are burned out too. But there are not a lot of towns that have excess levy capacity. And I would argue that we have excess levy capacity because we are not fully staffing our people and fully staffing our offices. So those costs could
That-
be even higher if we fully access that $1 million that we don't tap into and we try to very strategically tap into. That is uncommon in the state
Right.
of Massachusetts. I mean, I can remember my
Yeah.
former community, we'd go within $50 of the levy every year. I mean,
Right.
that was how we did it. And we had overrides and debt exclusions. We don't have any of those things
Yeah.
here. I really feel for the staff, you're running 1 to 2 person offices.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, I'm struggling to manage the FY 26 budget, as you can see in the town meeting warrant, because I believe the cuts were too draconian.
Mhm.
And I think we're gonna run into problems. I said at the personnel committee, and I'll say it again, I have never said this in 3 years. This is a hill I will die on, because I cannot operate this building and the town without the people that we have
Mhm.
and getting more people. And I think that the town deserves a fair fight at town meeting along with the school. And that let the residents decide what they would like to fund. But my job is to take care of town operations
Mhm.
and our wonderful employees. And so I will very strongly advocate for this. And I believe with the personnel committee voting unanimously for it as well, they heard it loud and clear. They understand it too. And I really think this is a gesture of not only goodwill toward the employees, but a necessity when health insurance went up 12% last year. And it's likely to go up at least that, if not more this year, because of the federal reforms that are being passed on to the consumer by the insurance companies.
And the brief research I did beforehand said we're not 2% behind, we're probably 4 to 6.
Oh, God, yeah, that's a given.
And we cannot
Right.
keep doing that.
And so my issue is not with the dollar amount, but with how it's distributed.
That's
In
fair.
that that if you do a percent increase, you increase the distance between the least paid and the most paid person in town. And that at a 5% increase, you know, the people at the lower end are barely covering their health insurance,
Mhm.
where the people at the upper end have money to cover other bills as well beyond just the health insurance. And I don't know, I don't know how you do a curve, because just because you're earning money doesn't, I mean, I think they deserve a raise all the way across the spectrum. But how do you make it so it is, so that gap between the most paid and the least paid in town does not continue to grow? And that the least paid in town don't get a pay cut even with a 5% raise, because their health insurance ate that and more. Because the people at the lower end need it more for groceries and you know, their taxes and other stuff like that.
Absolutely. And there's not really another way except through the class and comp plan. Those will actually be dollar amount adjustments to those positions. And those typically, it's the lower paid positions that typically see the biggest jumps, right? When I look at it, I look at our department heads are more on par, relatively on par, or close to being on par than our non-department head employees. And so my goal in doing this is to really try to make a dent in it right now, with the understanding that once that class and comp plan study gets done, we're going to have to make those larger adjustments for the non-department head positions. I expect and anticipate that. So unfortunately, I need that to be data driven, and I don't have the data right now to do it.
So basically, we're asking for. Yeah, so this is 2% no matter what, because of what I was gonna say, we're not asking for a budget number, we're asking for.
Right, 'cause
actual
this is to
plan.
allow Kristen to
Yeah.
do the budget, because there's no sense in her doing a budget at a 3% COLA and a 2% bump, and then halfway through the budget having us say, no, that number doesn't work right. I mean, it's typically, this is the time of year where we set that number. It doesn't mean it can't be adjusted. It
Nope.
could be at the end of the budget,
Yeah.
you know, things are too tight and we decide we're gonna go to 4.5 instead of 5, or that we're gonna go to 5.5 instead of 5, because, you know, other
Yeah.
numbers are
I was
looking
just
decent.
saying,
Yep,
if
yep.
it was a lump sum, you could distribute it
right.
differently. But
Well, and, you know, we could, I mean, I'd love to think that it's a 3% COLA and a dollar amount towards that we commit is going to be part of the adjustment. Thinking the adjustments are gonna be higher at the lower end than the higher end.
And we can
Uh,
park it in the HR budget like we have done for union and contractual negotiations. I actually think, I was gonna talk about a mid-year or adjustment even, or where we're gonna be
Well-
at. I don't wanna wait till 28 to do
Okay.
all of those adjustments.
Well, I agree, and I think, you know, we could also think as we get to, you know, if you have something done in spring, in April, we could end up doing some small adjustments with, if there happens to be some reserve funds that we can pull some of it off, and we expect that it will be in the budget, because obviously we
Right.
don't want to give someone a raise for 3 months, then cut it back that failed the town meeting.
I think that all is very reasonable and a very rational approach to doing it.
And so, because we're talking much budgets, we're not talking like, you know, Sally's gonna get $50 more in her next paycheck. So I'm fine with the 3%, as a COLA. And I am fine that there's some money to do some salary adjustments. And if that totals about $71,000, I think that is fair and it's definitely worth fighting with. I also know, even though I worry about where we go, I don't want us to start our budget process where we've compromised what we think we need as a town and then have to compromise again because even that compromise number was too high. I think we need to be asking for what we need to operate the town. I will still advocate that we need to be doing less. We have to find that we can't do everything that everybody wants to perfection with zero risk because that's unlimited dollars. And so it probably is more conscious stuff that we're just not going to do X or Y, or we're just not going to be the best at X or Y. Or that X or Y is going to take longer because we don't have the resources to do it faster. But the 71,000, I think is a number to start with at least.
Well, if I could add just one more thing, the size of the town is totally outpaced by how busy the town is, given its geographic location. And also when you look at, Metro West, which I've been saying
Yeah.
from the beginning is our market. And in fact, when I spoke to the Collins Center and they gave us the scope, they said your market is basically 30 minutes up and down 495
Right.
because that's where people can get here the fastest. So I know a lot of people say, but we're so small. Why do we have to pay those salaries? We have to compete with Metro West. We're competing with the Marlboroughs, the Westboroughs, the Northboroughs, you know, even some of the other
And
towns that
people
are a little more.
have to live
Right.
in this area.
Right.
No,
Frankly, we're competing with the fast food chains because some of them are paying better than some of the numbers that we're paying in some of our positions. So
Some towns are even going to sign-on bonuses. and
But-
Those are debatably
Are those even
legal.
legal?
Well,
I was gonna
you
say, that
No,
doesn't
because
sound legal to
it could
me.
open you up to a lawsuit because you have existing employees doing the same
Yeah.
task and you didn't give them a pay bump.
well, when you drive
Which
down the
seems
highway,
fair.
you see the signs. Are you a plow driver? Come with us, 20K sign-on bonus.
I say, I think my employer has over 200 openings currently.
Yeah.
You know, and has sign-on bonuses and recruitment fairs and goes to colleges and a 12-person or
Yeah.
more recruiting department that's out there constantly beating the bushes for
Yeah.
folks. So, yeah.
And I think all we're looking at here is trying to equalize with surrounding communities. We're not trying to, pay people exorbitant amounts. We're trying to make it so that this
Yep.
is equally as attractive as something
mean,
that's two towns over.
It means these are the same arguments that we were making when we were doing contract rate negotiations with the 3 department heads that had contracts up last year is that, yes, it was more money, increased percentage wise than we gave some of the
But when
frontline
you
folks.
add on
But when,
the-
but when you start looking at what other towns are paying for similar stuff and it's a tough tier. All 3 of you love this town, all 3 of, all the town but at a certain point, you got to look after yourself and we want to make that, so that is not a decision you want to make, that you want to stay here
Correct.
and continue to work with this great town.
And I like what you said about the projects is that, at some point, we're gonna have to discuss all the projects that are sitting in the town and we're gonna have to prioritize them and
I've started mapping out a board.
which is great, because at some point you're gonna say XYZ committee, where's the blah, 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 that you promised me, oh, I don't have it. Well, guess what? Now you slide to the bottom of the pile and that's going on hold until we get stuff, because if you continue to focus on minutia, those time suck projects that you don't have any control
Yep.
over, you're never going to get done what you need to get done. So unfortunately, it's time for the 3 of us to be like, you don't want to play?
Yep.
Have a seat outside. And I'm
Well,
okay with giving that message.
we're not fixing a brown barn in South Commons anymore.
No, we are not.
But I
No.
have 8 bids right now, that are queued up to be put out, and there is maybe fortunately or unfortunately only one of me.
Right.
And Dee completed her procurement classes.
Yep.
She's getting procurement certified, but she's also doing HR and doesn't have
Yeah.
the time and already working
And
outside of her job
licensing
description.
and all the other
900
things,
million other
yeah.
things, and I wear 5 hats
Yeah.
under the Town Administrator Act. That's a little unique.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge is you can't just look at the population and say, we're not busy, because this shouldn't be
No,
a
we're not
training
saying
town.
not busy. We're saying because of the small population, we don't have the tax base to have,
Correct.
3 people in each one of these offices.
Correct. I actually just anecdotally went to a labor seminar
Mm.
and everybody was from the Boston area that sat at my table.
Right.
And people are often curious where Berlin is
Yeah.
because they don't know. And they said, well, how many people are there? And, I said approximately 3,400. And the
Yeah.
woman next to me turned to me and goes, oh, so you guys do a little bit of everything and you
Right.
work way harder than employees in big cities and towns where
Yep.
there's more staffing. And I went, bingo. And it was nice to be
Which-
heard.
Which also, the Connors is that when you're in a big city, your job is like this little.
Super defined.
Well, it's super defined. It's this little box. You don't get to go outside of it. And in a town like this, you do get a broad sampling of things. And so I don't think any of the jobs in Berlin are ever boring.
No.
Because they vary a lot. And I think that's, in some respects, police and fire, we get people interested in those because they do get a broad spectrum. They're not the parking attendant for the first 5 years of their career.
Or just a
Nothing against
patrol
parking
officer,
attendants,
like
right, or just,
chief,
right.
Chief and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
When you work in a big city,
Right.
if you're a patrol officer,
Right.
that is all you do.
Yeah.
You're not learning about detective work, going to court, doing different things. It's the opportunity here to grow and expand.
Yep.
To me, it's like, that is worth the effort.
Mhm.
Provided people aren't getting burned out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's worth it up
There-
to some
There's
extent.
a pro and
but-
con to both of these sort of things.
I've always said that's why I'm not in a sleepy hollow little Western Mass
Yeah.
town, because I want that experience and I want the growth and, you know, the projects, you know?
But I do, it definitely at a later discussion at a to be named agenda item, we start to go through those, and unfortunately, we say, no, not now,
Correct.
but because we can't continue to be nice, and we can't continue to try and do everything for everyone, because when everything is critical, nothing is critical.
That is correct.
So, you
Yeah.
know, let that fall to us as the board people of the town.
Yep.
Right.
You want to help? Help.
Yep.
You don't want to help? Don't help, but don't complain.
Right.
Done.
Yeah.
And I'll
I
create
know,
that
good luck
list.
with that. That's
Well-
Peg's pipe dream for the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll create the list of
And-
what's sitting
Yeah.
and prioritize it into what I think the priorities are, and then
Then
bring
give
it to
it to
you
us.
all, and you guys decide if
We
we're
can
on the
pick it
same
up.
page or
Yep.
what have you.
Become a-
Yeah.
The
Should become an
unfortunate
election.
thing is you also, some of the things we're asking our volunteers to do are crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
They're
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
I know, and the same people keep volunteering time after
time
time.
after time.
Well,
and
the
yeah.
Bullet House is my favorite example, that the people who sit on Historic Commission did not get on Historic Commission to understand water runoff, you know,
Yeah, and spray
from
foam.
hills and,
No, it's
and,
insane.
septic system rules and,
I have a
you
solution
know,
for that, but we'll discuss that later.
well, we have that on. That is a discussion on December 1st.
Yes, it is.
December 1st,
Yes, it is. I'm making
Sure.
my notes.
we have promised several people on December 1st, we will talk about the interplay and the
Yeah, I would like to
1870
be
Town
for that.
Hall and,
Time for that.
Bullard House.
Just to
Yep.
close the loop
Yep.
on number of
Yep.
employees. 26 employees would receive 5%. I'm sorry, yes, 26 employees would receive 5%. There are 3 employees that are all sitting in this room that would receive just the COLA at 3%. And that doesn't include on-call
So-
firefighters, I should have put in there. That in those 29 people that are on this list, the call firefighters will have an adjustment as well, so we
Because
don't,
they're not part of.
they're
the
not union,
Okay.
right?
So what was the police number? I know you rattled off fire was like 68-ish.
There's
I
one like
missed police.
It was 180.
180 for the 9 officers.
everybody
We don't have the
2,000.
11th in place yet, and the
Mhm.
10th is the chief, and approximately
that's not-
68 in wages
that's not-
for fire.
You don't think?
Hmm?
$2,000 FTE across the board?
It's an option to look at, because then that would help to close that gap.
Oh.
Again, I think.
I think it's easier once you have
Right, so-
the things sorted out,
I-
which
I
is
think
why I
that-
like the pool of money where you look at
right.
the, once the.
So I'm wondering whether a motion that we are fine with a 3% COLA and that we are generally fine with about $71,000 in increased salaries. And that you've heard us about trying to not increase the gap too much between the most paid and least paid in town. And I think that's enough to start putting a budget together. I don't think we're sitting here with individual job titles and going, this job title should get 500 and this job title should get 1,200
And it's something to think about. I
Yep.
mean, I would like actually to at least, I would recommend
Yep.
sort of splitting this up the way that I've recommended now, but also putting some additional funding aside in HR for the ones that are going to be more impacted when we get the study done.
So you want more than $71,000 to cover this?
No,
Well, 71
71 will
now.
cover this, but it would be smart of us to park a little bit if case the study is done for FY 27, so we don't have to wait till FY 28. Because otherwise, all we're getting is the 2% adjustment for 27, and we have to wait a whole nother year and a half in order for July 1 of 27.
Again, because mine is that 2%, I think there are some that really are more 7 and 8, and some people who might be just 1.
Mhm.
And so I
Correct.
worry that we end up parking some money for a position that is not as underfunded and as a problem as others. And then I think we'll have in theory, a salary survey by the time you're doing the budget where we can do that 2% can be better distributed among employees.
I don't know if it'll be done in time in this year for it, which is kind of why I was thinking the simplest way was the 2%, and then knowing we're gonna have to do dollar amount adjustments as well. That's why I was thinking doing this and then parking, but
So you're okay with 3% increase and 2% COLA?
other way around.
3% COLA
3%
and-
COLA, 2% step.
I mean, in some respects, according to your chart, that puts a $4,000 increased difference between the lowest paid and the highest paid. That really exacerbates the gap between those two groups.
Yeah.
I don't know how you. The other piece of that, though, is you're also trying to equalize what those positions are paid with other communities.
Right.
And if we're 4 to 6% out on that already. I'm not.
Or at least narrowing the gap. That
Yeah,
was
I
my
think
thought.
I think it's about narrowing the gap.
It's a first step.
I get Darren got there. I also want to narrow the gap between the bottom employee and the top
Yeah.
employee, and this makes that, another couple of percent difference.
I think that's where the class and comp plan would come in. That would finish
that
off
we're not
making
gonna
that
have.
parity.
I mean, I'm not going to hold to the vote because I worry that if we get too divisive, we end up with no guidance to them, and I'd rather
Yeah.
to
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I
to
have
do
to
the
know how to build it.
5%.
Right.
I'm sort of good with either way. I don't know
Yep.
how you do this.
How you
So
close that
somebody-
gap
how
between
you-
here's a
how
$900.
you- yeah.
3% and you take the rest
And
and
it's
you
always-
divide it
you're always gonna
evenly
have
between
those
everyone else. So,
Because the different jobs inherently get paid by
Right.
skills and.
so you do
by-
3%, you give everyone $500 more a year. Top to bottom. I made up the number because I can't do the math fast enough to know what the remainder, I don't know what the remainder is, and I don't know how you divide it by 26 FTEs to get
To
there,
get there.
but so again, we're not increasing the gap between the highest paid and lowest paid, because I think the lowest paid, again, have the biggest problem when it comes to the inflation issues, and are probably, when we do the class and comp, it's going to be the lower end of the spectrum that I think that we have the biggest gaps on and the hardest time recruiting for.
That's something I can certainly look into and see if other towns have done that and how they've implemented it. My concern is when it's sort of like sign-on bonuses. When you do something like that, where it's a set amount, you do have to take skill, as you were mentioning, into, I feel like, the account. When you're talking about that kind of adjustment,
I think that in some respects, that's already baked into the salary, that I think someone who's earning 110,000 a year probably has more degrees and more experience than someone earning 30,000 a year.
and potentially more expenses as well if they have college loans to pay off. So, I
I
mean,
think
just,
there's people who make 30,000 a year who have college
Still
loans
have
to pay
college.
off, and even more so to work on that. It is the lower end of the spectrum that regularly gets screwed on these sort of things, and I'm trying to make sure that we are not doing that.
See, this is where I wish we had a
Um,
giant virtual whiteboard so that we could get up and show the math, to the folks.
Well,
I'm
and
just-
a lot
yeah.
of the lowest, we have a lot of part-time employees
Right.
in the building, so that also attributes to the lower
Well, but
annual amount because they don't work more than, some work only 10 hours.
yeah,
And they're not benefited.
I thought for the most part, these were sort of full-time equivalents as opposed to actual cash someone gets in, because we also have some people who work, some overtime hours
Yes.
who
Right.
are,
oh no, I would say at least half, if not more, of these are under 19 hours or less. We
Yeah.
have a lot of partial positions.
Yeah.
someone else
So
wants to make a motion.
I guess.
And-
I would move that we do the 3% COLA and the 2% with it in mind that our next adjustment is going to address with actual data,
Mhm.
the discrepancies.
I can live with that. I'll second it.
I'm fine with the discussion we've had. I don't need to discuss more. So all in favor of the 3% COLA with a 2% one-time adjustment, say aye. Aye. There's no opposed or abstentions. Mhm.
I just didn't think we could do
Yep.
that.
Level
in
of,
a- in
you
a-
get,
Yeah,
you all get 3%, but then you get an extra 100, you get an extra 600, you
Yeah,
get.
the data, yeah.
Well, no.
without the data, if we have the data sitting in front of us, I think it would be easy.
3% and $1,000.
But next
But-
time we will have that
Yep.
data. And
Mhm.
that's where that happens. And it can happen in an educated way rather than sort of a random,
Whatever.
I'm feeling this kind of way.
That was our last agenda item. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Nope, not second and one.
You
I'll
wanna
second it.
take one?
I'll second it.
You can stay all by yourself.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.